before hell erupted in the Caribbean. Two massive cartel narco-ships from Tren de Aragua and Sinaloa clandestinely rendezvoused, transferring 50 tons of fentanyl, meth, and cocaine worth $7 billion, as enough to kill millions of Americans. One wrong move could doom 5 chained hostages to a permanent grave. US Navy SEALs, hearts pounding under night vision goggles, gripped their weapons, ready to face death itself. How did this blood-soaked raid unfold? At exactly 3:10 a.m. on September 27, 2025, the dark waters of the Caribbean Sea hid a meeting that should have stayed a secret. Two cargo ships, one operated by Venezuela's brutal Tren de Aragua cartel and the other by Mexico's infamous Sinaloa syndicate, converged at a remote oceanic waypoint, far from prying eyes. Disguised as legitimate merchant vessels carrying agricultural goods, they were actually floating arsenals of death. Inside the Tren de Aragua's hold lay 50 tons of pure poison, 15 tons of fentanyl, enough to kill millions if it hit American streets, 15 tons of methamphetamine, crystal clear and ready for distribution, and 20 tons of Colombian cocaine refined to perfection. Street value over $7 billion, a fortune that could fund terrorism, corruption, and endless violence across the Americas. The ships eased alongside each other under the cover of night, their crews exchanging signals with encrypted radios. Nearly 35 cartel gunmen patrolled the decks, armed to the teeth with AK-103 assault rifles, RPK light machine guns, and Glock pistols. These weren't amateurs, these were hardened killers, linked to thousands of murders, kidnappings, and human trafficking rings. Below decks, the horror deepened. 5 hostages, 3 women and 2 children, chained in a makeshift prison, destined for sale into global sex trafficking networks. For years, Tren de Aragua and Sinaloa had operated like shadow empires, protected by corrupt officials in Caracas and Mexico City. Their alliance here was meant to seal the biggest at-sea drug deal in history, flooding U.S. cities with enough narcotics to addict a generation. This was no grand conspiracy, just raw criminal greed measured in lives ruined. The cargo's value was staggering. Enough fentanyl to produce billions of lethal doses, methamphetamine to hook entire communities, and cocaine to fuel overdose epidemics from Miami to Los Angeles. As the ships began their transfer, crates swinging across on makeshift cranes, the cartel bosses celebrated their imminent riches. They believed the open ocean was their untouchable playground, a lawless expanse beyond reach. That kind of arrogance always leads to a fall. Unbeknownst to them, the U.S. Navy had been tracking their every move. For 48 hours, American intelligence had tracked the operation with ruthless precision. Satellites overhead captured thermal signatures of the ship's engines. MQ-9 Reaper drones, flying at 25,000 feet, relayed high-definition video feeds back to command centers in Florida. Intercepted communications, encrypted texts, and radio bursts painted the full picture, a multi-billion-dollar exchange involving 50 tons of drugs bound for U.S. ports. The Navy's Joint Interagency Task Force South had pieced it together, confirming the hostages through audio snippets of desperate pleas. This wasn't just smuggling, it was an assault on American soil, disguised as cargo. The response was swift and surgical. At 2:45 am, 10 rigid-hulled inflatable boats launched from the USS Boxer, an amphibious assault ship positioned 20 nautical miles away. Each RHIB carried 6 elite operators, Navy SEALs and sailors, armed with M4 carbines, Mk-48 machine guns, and flashbang grenades. Overhead, an MH-60S Seahawk helicopter provided eyes in the sky, its flyer camera piercing the darkness. The plan was textbook: surround, illuminate, demand surrender. If resistance came, overwhelm with superior firepower. The cartel had no idea they were sailing into a trap set by the world's most powerful navy. By 3:05 a.m., the RHIBs had formed a perimeter, engines idling silently as they closed in. The air was thick with tension, the sea calm but deceptive. Sailors gripped their weapons, hearts pounding under night vision goggles. This was no routine interdiction, it was a high-stakes raid against armed fanatics who would fight to the death. The hostages added urgency. Any mistake could turn rescue into tragedy. In Washington, the Secretary of Defense watched via secure feed. Cartels like this thrive on fear and impunity. Today, that ends. Do you think the U.S. Navy could pull off a flawless takedown in total darkness? The answer was about to unfold in fire and fury. At precisely 3:10 a.m., as the cartel crews began hauling crates across the gap between ships, the MH-60S Seahawk roared into position overhead. Its powerful searchlight snapped on, bathing both vessels in blinding white light. "This is the United States Navy," boomed the helicopter's loudspeaker in Spanish and English. "You are in violation of international law. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Surrender now." For a split second, silence hung in the air, then chaos erupted. Cartel gunmen on the Tren de Aragua ship opened fire immediately. AK-103 rifles cracking in the night, bullets pinged off the Seahawk's armored fuselage, forcing the pilot to bank sharply. "Taking fire, hostiles engaging," the co-pilot radioed. The American response was immediate and overwhelming. From the circling RHIBs, Navy operators unleashed a barrage of suppressing fire. In the first 5 minutes, over 200 rounds were expended, 7.62 mm from MK-48s stitching across the decks, forcing gunmen to dive for cover. One cartel fighter leveled an RPG-7 at an approaching RHIB. The rocket streaking low over the water, it detonated just 50 yards short, sending a geyser of seawater skyward and rocking the boat. "Missile, close aboard. Press the attack," barked the SEAL team leader. Despite the near miss, the RHIBs accelerated, closing to boarding distance under a hail of return fire. Aboard the Sinaloa ship, panic set in. Gunmen with RPK machine guns sprayed wildly into the darkness, their tracers arcing harmlessly overhead. But the Seahawk circled back, its door gunner locking onto a mounted machine gun nest on the Tren de Aragua's bridge. A burst from the M240B shredded the position, killing 2 cartel members instantly and igniting a fuel drum. Flames erupted across the upper deck, illuminating the scene in orange glow. "Nest down, boarding teams, go!" The first RHIB slammed against the hull, grapples hooking the railing. SEALs swarmed aboard, moving in coordinated stacks, flashbangs exploding in corridors, disorienting defenders. The fight turned brutal, deck by deck. In a narrow passageway, a SEAL squad exchanged fire with 5 cartel gunmen barricaded behind crates. Over 300 rounds flew in 40 seconds, the air thick with cordite and screams. One American sailor took a grazing wound to the shoulder from a Glock pistol, blood soaking his vest, but he pressed on, dropping his assailant with a precise headshot. "Man down, but combat effective," he grunted over comms. On the Sinaloa vessel, another team breached the engine room, neutralizing 3 guards with the suppressed MP5s. The cartel fighters, outmatched in training and gear, began to falter. Ammo ran low, morale shattered. "They're breaking, push forward." By 3:17 the tide turned decisively. As flames spread from the initial strike, cartel leaders barked desperate orders, but it was too late. The SEALs cleared the bridges in under 2 minutes, zip-tying survivors. Over 25 gunmen were captured alive, their weapons piled on deck, AK-103s bent and smoking, RPKs jammed from overuse, below in the cargo holds. The true prize awaited. Operators pried open steel containers, revealing the 50 tons of narcotics, sealed bricks of fentanyl glowing under flashlights, bags of meth crystals, and vacuum-packed cocaine. The stench of chemicals mixed with fear, but the real shock came deeper. 5 hostages, chained and malnourished. 3 women in their 20s, 2 children no older than 10. We've got civilians, medevac priority. The victims were freed instantly, wrapped in blankets and given IV fluids by Navy corpsmen. The ships were too damaged and hazardous to tow, leaking fuel and riddled with bullet holes. Charges were set, C4 explosives placed at key structural points. At 3:25 a.m., the order came, detonate. The Tren de Aragua vessel erupted first, a massive fireball rising 200 feet, turning night into day. The Sinaloa ship followed, its hull splitting with a thunderous crack. Debris rained into the sea, the $7 billion cargo sinking to the depths. Overhead, the Seahawk scanned for survivors, plucking cartel stragglers from the waves. The operation had lasted just 15 minutes of kinetic action, but the preparation and execution were flawless. Interrogations began immediately aboard the USS Boxer. Captured the gunmen, many wounded and defiant at first, cracked under pressure. Seized hard drives and phones revealed a web of international corruption, bank transfers to Swiss accounts, shell companies in Panama, encrypted chats with European contacts. This wasn't just drugs, it was a destabilization network, funding arms deals and political bribes. The US Navy had not only stopped a shipment, but dismantled a cartel alliance. By dawn on September 27, 2025, the Caribbean waters bore witness to a resounding victory. In under an hour, the US Navy had eradicated 50 tons of deadly narcotics, 15 tons of fentanyl that could have claimed countless lives, 15 tons of methamphetamine fueling addiction epidemics, and 20 tons of cocaine poisoning communities. Street value exceeding $7 billion wiped from existence in flames and salt water. 5 innocent hostages walked free, their chains broken, receiving medical care that would heal their bodies if not their scars. 30 cartel fighters captured alive, dozens more killed or wounded in the firefight, shattering a long-standing criminal partnership between Tren de Aragua and Sinaloa. The intelligence haul was priceless. Digital evidence exposing global money laundering operations, weapon procurement rings, and smuggling routes stretching from South America to Europe. For the cartels, this was more than a loss, it was humiliation. They had gambled on the ocean's anonymity and paid with everything. For America, it was proof of resolve. The Navy didn't just defend the borders, it struck at the heart of threats, wherever they hid. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's words echoed from the Pentagon. This operation sends a clear warning. Anyone who poisons our nation, traffics in human lives, or challenges our security will face annihilation on the seas, in the air, or in their own backyards. The cartels thought they were untouchable. Today, they're broken, their empires cracked wide open. The high seas are no longer a safe haven for criminals, they're a battlefield where you, as power, reigns supreme. Now, I turn the question to you. Do you believe strikes like this will finally dismantle the cartels, or will they adapt and strike back harder? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you value in-depth analysis like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the next story of American forces delivering justice.